And here we go. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good day, everyone. A very warm welcome to another Sunday live stream here at For the Love of Comics. Great to see everyone in the chat already. Welcome, welcome. The comic board is here saying he'll be listening in, but not commenting as he is finally tackling reorganization of his shelves. A noble pursuit. Good luck with that. Hello, Edward. Hello, Tommy. Hello, Samrat. Hello, Abhilash. I'll need my glasses. Vermilion Clouds is here. Shudip Dasgupta is here. Comic Crack. Hello, I'm very glad to see you because I have some questions for you specifically and others as well as we will soon see. Sleepy Reader, another person I'm very glad to see because I have specific questions I think directed at some of you. Who else do we have? Gore Vidal. All right, excellent. This is off to a great start. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time. This is I label this a surprise live stream. It's really an impromptu live stream or an uncharacteristic live stream. It wasn't really something I was planning to do. It's just that last weekend I did something uncharacteristic, and therefore an uncharacteristic live stream seemed appropriate because of what happened. And it's not a big deal, and those of you who've seen some of my posts about this already know what it is, but for those of you who don't or are otherwise catching up, last weekend I did something very unusual, or unusual for me, uncharacteristic, as I was saying. Several things, actually. I left the apartment. I left my domicile of my own free will for recreational purposes. I traveled halfway across town and went to a crowded marketplace where there was a sale of comic books, physical comic books in a physical bookstore that I had heard about, that my wife had brought to my notice. And this sale was advertised as a mainly Marvel and DC single issues sale. And that's pretty much all I knew about it. So those of you who have been friends with me for a while online, you will know that this ticks a lot of boxes of things I don't do. And the fact that I did it for single issues in Marvel and DC in particular, I think will strike some people as a little strange. But there are specific reasons for that, and that's what I want to talk about a little bit, and also talk about what I found there, the stuff I picked up, which is a stack of single issues and a couple of magazine-sized issues over here, but nothing as ridiculous as you might expect. But why did I do this? Why did I go out? Why did we make this excursion? Because my wife was instrumental. Ashwita sort of got me out of my indolence and said, no, come on, this is something we have to do. How often does it happen? And that was the whole point, is that this is not just an unusual experience for me. I think it's, in general, an unusual experience. We don't really have comic book shops, as I've talked about with people. We don't have LCSs. We don't have weekly poll lists, although there are semblances of these things coming up in certain areas, but nothing dedicated to comics like that. And this whole thing of going to a store and just browsing long box after long box of singles, you know, with your little fingers as if they're records, things like that aren't part of our daily experience as comics readers here in India. And when I watch people like many of the people who are in the chat right now, whose YouTube channels are fantastic windows into North American comic book buying, for example, of these institutions and these shops and these experiences, when they talk about things like this, I'm always very, very envious. I wish I could do that. And so if the opportunity presented itself to step out and do that, as rare as it is something that we felt, and my wife convinced me, it's something that I should do. So that's the context. That's what happened over here. I'm just going to quickly check the chat to see if there are any questions. Tucked away stores in a movie, if you only knew the area. Yeah, this is what I want to talk about. This is what I want to start by talking about is I think this was on Instagram. My wife saw this post, and I think I'd run across this post, but I hadn't paid it much heed or something like that. And she said, oh, look, there's a comic sale. And I was like, comic sale. I do all my shopping online and they're not going to have things that I want. And it says Marvel and DC titles. And I said, well, that's definitely not for me. I'm not going to waste a Saturday or a Sunday traveling and going to buy Marvel and DC comics that I can buy on Amazon. But we did, and we did step out. And let me see if I can get this to work, because I've been trying to practice with this. Let's see. Can I? Aha, there we go. So it was halfway across the city. As I said, it was a big marketplace, one of those sort of open and closed combination marketplaces that you find in most urban areas in India. And so this wasn't even part of the central marketplace. It was off in a little alley, and we kept walking down this alley. And it just looked very industrial, and probably the residences of people who work in the shops in the marketplace. That was where this alley was connecting off of. And we were a little lost at first, and we're trying to find the exact address on maps until we saw this sign, which is like, okay, there it is. But obviously the sign is just floating above the road. So we had to find that little area that's tucked away to the side that this sign is inviting us to. So this was a comic sale. Apparently, this was organized by worthing.in. Now, I'm not familiar with this site, but a number of people I know, a number of my friends online, apparently use this website to buy comics in India. It's an Indian website that sells single issues. And what's interesting from what I saw in here, as well as what I've seen online, is that it's not just the most recent issues. It's back issues and some old stuff from, and old stuff, 70s maybe, but 80s, 90s for sure. So a lot of back issues, things that we don't really see, this website has them. Now, this is just to clarify that this is not a sponsored video. They've not paid me for this. I've just discovered that. But I get a lot of questions asking about where can I buy comics in India, and where do you buy comics? And most of what I buy are graphic novels, collected editions, or full reads in volumes, but in book shape. Single issues, I've always said, aren't really part of the culture over here. But at the same time, we often encounter them. We find them, and we know people who have them. So this is the first time that I've seen something very organized and very a decent scale of single issues over here. But that's to say that, let's get back to the story. So we got over here, and then going inside, we saw this area, which is just a narrow little corridor. And there are boxes, long boxes, short boxes, just cardboard boxes full of comics and people browsing them. And this is part of, either it's a bookstore, but it felt like it's a warehouse. It's a sort of storage area for where maybe their online portal, where they keep their stock. And they were having a sale in that location. So it's not really a bookstore, at least not in the traditional way that we think about it, although you can obviously purchase books over there. And looking through that, this is what I first saw. Something, again, as I say, a very unusual sight for us in India. You don't really see comic books just like this. So those of you who are watching this in the United States or Canada, or in places where you do have this might seem like much ado about nothing. But for me, to get out of the house, this experience is unusual enough. It is remarkable enough. And there's just something that I've always enjoyed doing when I'm traveling and I can attend where I can go to comic book stores. I enjoy browsing comics in this way, not when they're up on the shelves, sort of showing you the most recent releases, but going through back issues, digging through things that are sometimes very chaotically organized in order to see what might catch your eye and what might draw your attention, what treasures you may find, I'm sure, are things that people talk about. And these are experiences that are for the most alien to us, unless we're talking about it in a very different context, not in a very organized comic book context, but we have all, I think, been in the position of finding comics where we didn't expect to find comics. And that's a different kind of adventure altogether. But this is what I was seeing, and this is what was all around us. And this is, as I was saying, warehouse. So it was barricaded off. So we only had a couple of passageways and we could see the rest of the warehouse. And these are prose books for the most. And there was an assortment of prose books, I think, that were also on sale. My wife did end up buying a couple of prose books here as well. But I don't know if these shelves were being browsed or not. Most of the focus was on these boxes of comics that were laid out and were being offered for sale. Now, a little word about these prices. I think very roughly, I would say that 100 rupees is $1.20 or $1.10. But so you would have, there were comics available for roughly $1, but then you also had things like 5 comics for $3, and if you bought them from a particular stack, or there were certain other stacks which were not full runs but arcs put together, and that was for $3. So in some cases the full arc was 3 issues, in some cases it was 5 issues. It all depended, but it had also been curated to a certain extent. So there were various selections around here of these comics that we could see, and that's what we browsed. That's what we went through. And this is this video, this episode, this live stream is to go through what I picked up, what I found over there. And another thing that makes this whole thing quite unusual and uncharacteristic is the reason why this video is titled Evaluate My Haul. Because apart from a couple of exceptions, I picked up stuff that I have no idea about, just because I was discovering things and I was finding things. And honestly, I was a little caught up in the whole exercise of it. So I wanted to grab as many things as I could. Now, all of these boxes that I saw, most of them were Marvel and DC. So I saw a lot of X-Men, I saw Doctor Strange, Thor, let's see, some Black Panther, but nothing very new and nothing very old. I was looking at mainly stuff from the 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010s. And then there were Image Comics, a lot of Image Comics, but a lot of the early Image Comics, again, the 90s, and as one of my friends said, Extreme with triple X, Extreme Image Comics, a number of those. And looking through these, although I can, I recognize character names, etc., I found certain things that were of interest and certain things I recognized, but obviously, there's an ocean of work out there. And now when you're not even looking at trade paperbacks and seeing, which run this is collecting, it's just random issues. It's very, very intimidating. It's very interesting because I found myself not really recognizing most, apart from the big name characters, most of the stuff I was looking at, especially when it got to all of the Image Comics. So as an example of the most common things I found, and now I can see if this is working, is this visible? I've got a little bit of an extra light rigged up over here. But for example, early on, I found these issues of Dark Victory and Long Halloween. Now, obviously, I have Dark Victory and Long Halloween, the Tim Sale, Jeff Loeb collaborations in collected editions, but I'd never seen them in singles. And what struck me about them is that they were very hard, very thick cardstock. Am I not audible?
Audio is only coming through the left channel.
Oh, all right. My wife is telling me that the audio is only coming through the left channel. So let me see if I can do something about this. That's strange. Apologies. Apparently this happened in my previous live stream as well, and I had checked it, and now it's gone back to being that way. Those of you who are listening to me on speakers, I suppose you're not, it doesn't make that much of a difference, but on headphones, I think it really stands out. And I'm not really sure why this is happening. And I'm not really sure if working on it while live is the best idea. Just give me a second. I'm very sorry about this. That fixes it right now. Am I coming through both channels? Someone will have to probably let me know in the chat. All right. Until someone says anything different through both the headphones. Thank you, Edward. I saw that chat. That means that I'm going to get back into the swing of things. All right. Thank you very much. Sorry for the interruption. So here we have the Tim Sale covers that were part of the reason why I picked these issues up. They both happen to have Poison Ivy covers, so that's cool as well. This is number 6 from the Long Halloween. This is number 11 from Dark Victory. But as I was saying, the Long Halloween has glossy and very sturdy cardstock cover. The pages are good quality, but I didn't realize, I guess this is some sort of, it's not the prestige format, but it is some sort of a special type of issue for sure. And this, the Dark Victory cover, is also quite sturdy. It's not glossy, however. It is a matte cover, and one that I think I might enjoy more than the glossy covers, especially when trying to light it from overhead, as I'm trying to do right here. So that's what an example is of something I saw, but these are comics I know, and these are series I'm familiar with, and so therefore I'm just, I'm happy to find them. They're interesting. They give me insight into something, but it's not a new thing or a discovery. I did find this as well. This is Dark Victory 0. Now, I'm not sure if Dark Victory 0... most of the comics over there were bagged and boarded. Most of them, all of them, I think, were bagged. And some of them were not bagged and boarded. So I would say that was another thing that I was quite interested in seeing. The fact that they were coming packaged like this in single issue form with a bag and board. I don't know what that says about the supply chain, but it's probably been packed like this in the United States and then shipped in a big thing, and that's the container they have. I don't think this has been opened since it left wherever it came from. But anyway, what I did find was Dark Victory 0 from Wizard magazine. Now, this is one of those things where throughout this live stream, I'll be asking you to answer questions for me, to tell me what's up with these things, and to tell me where I'm wrong. I think Wizard magazine was a comics magazine. It had comics journalism, it had comics, but it also brought out issues of comics, or it commissioned special issues of comics. And I know this because of the Wizard half issue of Astro City and the Wizard, or was it the Wizard issue of Astro City 1? But there's a Wizard issue of Bone as well. So those are two comics that I know aren't part of the regular continuity, but they are part of the canon. They are the story, but they're not part of the regular publication, and they were brought out by Wizard. This is DC Wizard number 0 for Dark Victory. So I don't know if this is part of the collected edition of Dark Victory. I think it might be part of the Absolute, but not the trade paperback or the hardcover, or it might be part of that. I haven't had a chance to look through this and compare it to my collected edition, but that was something that I was like, oh, this is something interesting. This is something that I may not have encountered before. So this is one of those things that caught my eye. Dark Victory 0 from Wizard. All right. Comic Crack is answering questions. Thank you very much. Let's see. What are we saying? Classic and beautiful books. Yes, if you're not familiar with the Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale collaborations, either with the Batman stories or with the 3-4 Marvel stories that they did, they're highly recommended. Most people I know really enjoy them, and I'm a big fan of the Long Halloween, Dark Haunted Night, and Dark Victory, as well as Spider-Man Blue and Daredevil Yellow. Those stories are also classics. I'm very happy to have a piece of that in this form. Wizard did a lot of number 0 issues and even ashcans that they packed with the mags, right? So these issues came packaged with the magazines then. Thank you so much for illuminating me. So it's a prequel story, Edward says, Dark Victory number 0. Interesting. All right, so let me know if you're watching this later in the comments or in the chat right now, if this is part of the collected edition, if this is part of the absolute edition or something separate. So that's this is straying from what I know. I mean, Dark Victory is something I'm still familiar with, etc. But this might be something that I do not have in another form. I'll find out when I look at this. All right, moving on. There's a stack of stuff here. All right, so next we've got, I actually found a couple more issues of Dark Victory, and what I like about them is that they're quite thick. So they're not, well, especially number 1 over here seems like a double-sized issue. Number 2 over here seems like a regular thinness. So again, just for my edification and to put myself into the, into the skin of people who read this as singles when it was coming out, which is a lot of the allure of the singles for people like me who get them after the fact, who aren't reading them currently, but pick them up as pieces of history of when this story first came into play. So because of the low prices and because of the novelty of the situation and the intoxication of being in there, I picked up more copies within the story that I already have. So more Dark Victory. Also, then I started looking at things that I may never be able to find in collected edition, or do I want to check them out in collected edition, things that I may know something about, something I may not know about. Although before that, I found this single issue of Kabuki. This is number 3. It says Act 3. I only have Kabuki in the library edition, and that too only the first volume in hardcover. And I was told, and then I discovered that the hardcover is unfortunately not formatted very well, especially for a couple of circular panels. And I hear that the newer soft covers do a much better job of reproducing that. So I was kind of holding out to try to get all of them in hardcover, but I think I'm going to just have to bite the bullet and go for the paperback editions as long as they're still available. It's something that is an interesting series. It can be a little difficult to enjoy, but it is always admirable, and it, I think, is rewarding for people willing to challenge themselves. And it does change, even within that first hardcover volume I have, it does change substantially. So this is from early on, I believe. Again, I'm looking at these things for the first time along with all of you, but Kabuki number 3 should be pretty early on. But again, I've never seen one of these issues. I'd never seen it in single issue format. There is that old texture, the paper, the printing quality, and of course the smell. So here's an issue of something that, again, I do have or will probably get in collected edition that I picked up because I was happy to find it here. And that goes in all directions. There was this one Thor which seemed like an older issue, and looking inside it, I could tell from the cover as well that this is one of the Walter Simonson issues. But obviously Walter Simonson had a tremendous run on Thor, so that could be any number of them. But this isn't something new or more modern, maybe because of the popularity of the movie, something that's being published now. So it's got those old ads and stuff like that I love. And this is in the middle of something. I didn't find anything around it. This is the only one I found. But once again, I'm browsing back issues in a long box in a little alley somewhere, not something I thought I'd be doing in New Delhi. So I'm picking this up just so I can say, hey, this weekend I went to a comic book sale and I picked up an issue of Thor and an issue of Kabuki. So as you can see, a lot of this is about the storytelling of the experience that I'm doing for myself. These are fun to look at, and I do like single issues, but these are not really giving me a full story. This is just having pieces and snatches of something because of where I'm getting them. So is anyone telling me, oh, Wizard number 0 is excellent? So The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. David Mack in black and white art is intriguing to see. Yes, the black and white of Kabuki is, and I think we'll see a little this later. There's a there's a whole period in American comics where black and white comics as alternative comics and black and white comics in the mainstream kind of came together, and there are things in that thing that are neither that absolute counterculture and neither the big two. There's a lot of interesting independent black and white comics out there, and it's interesting how the costs being lower for black and white printing obviously had something to do with it, of lower budget and smaller publishers, but how that was harnessed by artists to make art that for many people is superior to color art. Although, I mean, I think that's a ridiculous thing to generalize on, but it is, for me, that period, and looking at those comics is also very interesting. That's Rick says this is from the very end of the Simonson run, just 2 issues away from Mjolnir's Song issue. Wow. All right. Okay. So almost at the end of Walt Simonson's run, I've picked up one issue from that run. Yeah, Sleepy Reader says sliding down the slippery slope to single issue collecting. I think that slope was slid down a long time ago. I think the not going and buying weekly thing is the only thing that's different. I've always, once I started buying single issues, within reason, I would tell myself, it's okay to have that. It's just because I love that. And my next things that I'm going to show are going to bear this out even more, because this is the kind of stuff that I do with single issues. Is over here. Oh yeah, there was a box over there where I think most of those were number 1. That's what the thing was. Now, I'm not a key collector and I don't have slabs, or I don't know what key issues are, but I guess someone had curated that box, or someone had just pulled a whole bunch of number 1s and put them in a box. So I was looking through it, and as I said, I didn't recognize most of these series. A lot of them were from Image, but even from Marvel, and it's not like classic, little known series or things like that I would have at least heard of. I hadn't heard of these. I mean, I could recognize some characters, but then I looked and I tried to look at the writer and the artist, and I don't think I recognized many of them either. So, but in that box, I did find Bone number 1 from Image. This is the Image reprint. So those of you who've watched my Bone videos or otherwise know about Bone, Bone was briefly published by Image for 3 or 4 issues, like 27, 28, 29, something like that, somewhere in the late 20s. And at that time, they also reprinted all the issues up to number 20. So this is number 1, Born from Image, reprinted. This is obviously the original black and white. So Born didn't last at Image Comics very long and went back to Jeff Smith's cartoon books very soon. And not only do I have Born 1, I have this Born 1, but it's Born, and it was there in the box, and I'd just gone by a whole bunch of issues that I hadn't picked up, so I picked this up, as I did pick up Starlight number 1, which is Starlight is a great comic. It is, I think, my favorite Mark Millar comic, or my second favorite. It's right up there, and he plays it absolutely straight. There's no perversion or subversion or anything like that. This is a classic Flash Gordon Got Old or Adam Strange. It's a superb book that I do have in its collected edition. So there's no real reason for me to pick this issue up, except for the fact that I really do love this story, and it is wonderful art, and it is a single issue that I haven't seen before. I mean, I'm aware that it was published in single issues, but I've always known it as a collection, as a slim collected edition, I think it was 4 issues. I don't even think it was 6. I think it was maybe 4 issues or maybe even 3 issues. It's a very slim trade paperback. But here I am picking up 1/3 of it because the price is right, and the mood has struck me. So that's a couple of number 1s, Bone and Starlight. I rescued that bone one. Indeed, indeed. I will gift it to someone. I will give it a good home. There is this feeling that and I don't know how much everyone will agree with me on this. I've had a conversation with a friend of mine, and he says when he sees something like this, but whether it's a book or a record that he already has, but it's there and it's available, and especially if the price, he'll buy a second copy or third copy. And he says, because he doesn't want anyone else to have it. And I'm just like, no, how can you, it should be the other way around. You should leave it there for someone else to discover it. You've already got, you're like, no, I don't want, I paid $10 for that. Here it is for $2. Why should someone have it for $2? So you're going to pay another $2 on top of the 10 you already paid to have a second copy. But I wonder sometimes is that, would it be better for me to rescue it, as Sleepy Reader put it, and then gift it to somebody and give it and curate its movement forward rather than leave it to chance and have it be pulped somewhere or be part of a landfill, etc. So that's a type of justification that we can do. I think. Shulip says 6 issues for Starlight. Really, it went by very fast. Starlight is one of those things that I wish there was a little bit more of. From being imprisoned in a plastic case. I don't know if the image #1 of Bone is that way, but I'm not done yet, because as I said, I did find Image Comics, and here is a Maxx #1, which I mean, yes, I'll take that. Thank you. I've talked about the Maxx a couple of times now. My introduction to the Maxx and starting reading the Maxx was chronicled on this channel in one of my recent reads videos after I just read the first volume, and I said, this is excellent, I'm going to try to find the other volumes, I need to read more of this story. And I did end up finding most of those other hardcover volumes I was looking for, except for one in the middle, #5, I think. So what I found was that the single issues aren't that hard to get. I guess they had decent print runs from Image, and I was able to, that volume that I couldn't find, I was able to find all of those issues in singles. So I have the whole of the Maxx now, most of it in collected editions, and one volume in single issues. But here's #1. Again, I didn't need it. I have it already, but I was happy to see it, and it's in nice condition. I don't think it's rare or expensive, and that's not really the point. Again, it's a fun little thing to have, and I can put it next to my probably next to my collected editions on the shelf. So the Maxx #1 from Image, something that I recognized, at least in that box. I said that, hey, I know this. So like Starlight and like Bone, here's a #1 just because it was there. It wasn't there for me to grab. I also did find another Image #1. This is Youngblood by Rob Liefeld. I hope it's the original I don't know. I haven't done much research, but also there's a lot of Youngblood out there. Now, some months ago, when I made my favorite Image Comics video, the live stream that I had, a lot of people, and some people in particular, said, you have to read Youngblood. It's fantastic. It's terrific. And I was like, I don't know. I have a opinion of it, because I'd heard and what I had seen seemed like just not my cup of tea. A lot of gritted teeth and machismo, bulging biceps. I'm not going to talk about pouches and feet and all of the cliche stuff, but just a whole bunch of bang, boom, blast, boom, and not much character, not much. Well, I mean, I don't know if this is true, but I mean, people said, no, you've got to check it out. You don't know America in the 90s, or you won't understand Image Comics, or you won't understand kids in those days unless you read Youngblood, which I'm still not 100% on, but here is a #1. I don't know if this is where Youngblood starts. I know it was somewhere else before Image, but maybe it's a reboot, unless it's some sort of an old, unless it's some sort of a later thing. So if you know anything about this particular Youngblood issue or run or something, let me know. Let me know. It's one issue. So what have I got to lose, right? I can just give it a shot, which is why I'm not even going to put it back in the bag. I'm going to leave it outside so that I can pick it up and read it with even fewer barriers than I have right now. Poor Liefeld, he gets so much grief. He does, I think. I mean, I don't know a lot, but I think he gets a lot of grief. But I think he's also very successful and very he has a lot of fans. So that's, it balances out. I think it's fine. Just from what I've seen, I'm never really sure whether I should feel sorry for someone or not, because there's so many sides to so many stories. Yeah, the Maxx is a great comic. Any piece of it that I can get in this way. Connected to that, I also got this thing called Darker Image, which I think, maybe from what I know, or maybe I'm just guessing, from what I think, this is a sampler, and you could probably get a sample of the Maxx and of Youngblood or stuff that Image was publishing at that time. And I've seen things that are similar to this, and so that would be interesting, and it's another way to get another look at the Maxx. But another thing I realized when I pulled this out from the box is it seems to be bagged, like it's sealed. Like this is not a comics bag. This seems to be the way it was shipped, and it's never been opened, which means that there is... Can you see it over here? Should I put it over here? Let's see. Is that better? There's that glare. There's a card in here. This is a Maxx card. And I don't care how old the marketing is, it worked. I was like, okay, I guess I'm getting this sampler of stuff that either I'm already got or I'm not going to read. And I'm going to get it because it has a little trading card or something. And I've never been a trading card person. I have a couple of card sets, but it's never been part of my culture to get bubblegum or comic books and get cards within them. So whenever I see things like this, and I think the one that comes to mind always is the Topps bubblegum bringing out Bram Stoker's Dracula. They had cards in that, and I got that Bram Stoker's Dracula run because it was Mike Mignola. I know there's a black and white edition out of it now, but I got the original singles, and they all had cards in them. Now this one has a card in it, so I guess I'm going to open this and take a look at this card, because that's really fun. I don't know anything else about this card. I don't know if it's like silver. I don't think it's a hologram or foil or all those things you hear about that people have. But yeah, Darker Image #1. Although I guess that there might have only been one issue of it. Cards are always fun to get. Yes, absolutely. Polybagged. Is that what that's called? All right. So polybagged means... Oh, I guess it's the same as like Lego or something like that, where it's a sealed packet as opposed to a comics bag, which is a resealable bag. All right. Thank you. See, I'm learning. This is why this needed to be a live stream, because I have a lot of questions and a lot of misunderstandings, and probably... well, we'll get to those. Another thing I found was an issue of Sin City. This is from A Dame to Kill For. This is 5 out of 8, or is it 6? 5 out of 6. So it's in the middle of Sin City, and I don't actually have Sin City. I have read Sin City, and I have the Hard Goodbye in the Curator's collection and in trade paperback, and the Hard Goodbye is probably my favorite, but I've never completed the series as part of my home library. I've borrowed it from friends and read it, and I've read the whole thing, and I've read parts of it more than once. It's never been my cup of tea. Again, different tastes, I guess. There are a lot of things to admire, but then I picked this up because I liked the production of this. It's hard, robust cardstock. The printing in it is nice and matte, and not glossy, but also not faded and old. It's quite white. Whoops, nudity. Children-friendly show, people tell me. And I really like looking at this one thing. I mean, I'm probably not going to run out and buy every volume of Sin City out there, but browsing this and taking a look at these in this form, where it's not that heavy and thick in your hands, and it's easier to pick up go through and toss to the side, this might help in my journey towards appreciating Sin City more than I do right now, which, as I said, is definitely there, just not a comprehensive love for it. Okay, I think that is the first category. Oh, all right. Let me complete a couple of different things. All right, now here we have a couple of comics that weren't me. This is my wife picking them up and then throwing them into, you know, where my stack is so that she can go and look at the pros and stuff like that. And these are things she picked up because I think she liked the art, or she went through it and read a couple of pages and it appealed to her. She's in the chat. I think she's in the chat, unless she's fallen asleep or headed off somewhere else. This is Rasputin. I have no idea about either of this. And this is Imperial. This is published by Image Comics. I don't know from when. And this is also published by Image Comics. I also don't know from when. But these are, again, because of the prices and because of, you know, get 5 for $3 and things like that, picked up. I think she did send me a link to the trade paperback of Rasputin, so I know that it's been collected or it's at least completed one arc. And I have to say that the art in this looks really lovely. This looks very appealing, and I can see when you're browsing in a comic book store, if you pick this up without knowing anything else, how this can have that appeal. Now, how good the story is, I'll ask you guys if you have read it, if you know of its reviews or how it's been received. It does look beautiful to me, but I haven't taken a look at the story or the text, the text and the art working together for the story. And Imperial seems a little bit more cartoony, but also appealing. I can see, well, I mean, we were looking at Starlight a little while ago. We've seen the clean lines of Darwin Cook. I wouldn't compare this to Cook or Parlov, but there are similarities. There is that very clean sort of look, and the colors separated this way. You'll have to ask her why she picked, what exactly appealed to her about this. I wouldn't necessarily have picked this up on first glance, particularly because it's not issue 1. At least if it's, if I find issue 1 and 2, then I can take a chance. These are both issue 4 or 5 or 6 or something like that. So she's picking them up really as a sampler, and I have done my duty by representing these comics, and away they go. Comic Crack was picking up Rasputin, and Sleepy Reader says that these are from early 2000 teens. All right. And Rasputin got good reviews. All right. So I guess we'll be taking a look at Rasputin. All right. There were trade paperbacks also over here in this sale. Most of the trade paperbacks that I saw were DC trade paperbacks. There were some Marvel trade paperbacks, but they were I recognized more of the TPBs than I did of the singles. And that's not to say that I recognized a lot of them, but they were at least about characters and things. So there were Justice League, there was JSA, there was Green Lantern, trade paperbacks, Jeff Johns stuff. But they were all very, very chopped up. So there was volume 2, volume 4, volume 6. They were at good prices, and I saw several Vertigo trade paperbacks. Like I saw some volumes of DMZ, I saw some volumes of 100 Bullets. Now I have those series and I have all volumes of them, and they were in trade paperbacks, so I have the trade paperbacks. So it's not as if there was a hardcover edition or anything. There was nothing like that to be seen. So I pretty much looked through the trade paperbacks very quickly and ignored most of them, except for the Simpsons trade paperbacks that I found, this one and this one. And of course, the good thing about the Simpsons is that I've heard a lot of good stuff about the Simpsons published by Bongo Comics, and they've gotten good reviews through the years. They've gotten Eisner nominations and wins for humor publication. And again, a friend of mine turned us on to the Treehouse of Horror comics, which have some amazing creators involved in them and are also very good. So I know the Simpsons comics are good, and I know picking up even a sampler of them, there's no continuity that I need to worry about. There isn't, where is volume 3? If I'm going to read volume 4 first, am I going to understand the story? Very much like Disney comics and other comedy comics. The stories can be self-contained or have 2-issue arcs at most. At least that's been my experience. So I knew that it was a safe bet getting these both from the point of view of quality as far as the storytelling is concerned, as well as continuity and having complete individual stories for these. So that's why these make the cut. The interesting thing about both these books actually, is once I got home, I realized that neither of them were actually published by Bongo Comics, who published The Simpsons. This volume, which is The Simpsons Comics Royale, is published by, I don't know if you could see it here, it's published by HarperCollins. That's the logo. That's the logo we have over here. So this is a HarperCollins publication, which is a trade publisher. Of course, HarperCollins does bring out comics, but they're not a comics publisher. So this is a trade made for the mass market, I guess. This is not necessarily for comics readers only. So it may not be. It may be a selection, it may be a best of, it may be putting them together thematically, the way that sort of Calvin and Hobbes collections, although they did end up being complete, or Peanuts collections were brought out by publishers who weren't comics publishers. This one, on the other hand, is published by Titan Books. So from what I know, Titan Books is a UK publisher. I could be wrong. Let me know if that's not the case. So, because I've seen Titan Books publish a lot of 2000 AD comics, so maybe that's my association. But yeah, 2 Simpsons trade paperbacks collections, not published by a comics publisher. Well, Titan Books is, but a UK edition, and probably the only UK comic I found in this thing, which was otherwise pretty much US publishers and US things. Sleepy Reader says that the Simpsons Treehouse is not so easy to find these days, all out of print. Yes, I can imagine. I don't think I have. I think I have one of them, and I don't think I could find the others. One of my friends might just have been able to pick them all up before they became incredibly difficult to find. But they are really, really, the collection of talent, at least from looking at the table of contents and the creators involved, is fascinating. Okay, so then what do we have here? Oh, something else I picked up, which was, I think one of these things was, this was part of the get 5 comics for $2 or something like that from one particular bin. This is Dynamite Comics Red Sonja. Now, I know that Red Sonja has had many iterations over the years, and I think that even Dynamite Comics have had separate series. So I'm not sure which series this is. I've never read any Red Sonja, and to be perfectly honest, I've always wondered what, because of the way that she's dressed, I think on the covers, that bikini thing as being a barbarian fighter, I think that's always sort of been one of those things that put me off, as in how realistic or how savage is it, only about titillation, etc., etc. I do like Conan comics, and I have enjoyed Conan comics, but there's, when you take it, the dancing girl is dressed a particular way, I can get it. When the warrior is dressed a particular way, it's a different thing. But I hear people say good things. Now, I don't know anything about this run, but this is number 1. This is number 3, 4, and 5. So I don't have number 2. They didn't have number 2 over there, but these were all super cheap. But I don't know. Am I wrong about Red Sonja? Is Red Sonja, a fantastic pulp heroine? And even if she is in prose, does that translate to the comics? Does that translate in particular to whatever this thing is, this run is that I have picked up? I don't know who the artist or the writer is. I tried looking in this first issue for some credits, but either they're very well hidden or my eyes are completely gone. I couldn't find them, but I'll look it up and see. Um, Red Sonja has great shoes. All right. Okay. All right. Now we're getting to things. Let's see. Now we were talking about things that I kind of have some idea about, or I've read before in some form, or I'm either picking up as an impulse, even though I have it, or it's something I have an idea about. Now, what I have over here are things that I have no idea about, or very little idea about. So one of the I found only one issue of American Flag by Howard Chaykin, and this is number 3. I don't know if this is the original beginning number 3 or a different run that came later or a revival or anything like that. I've heard about American Flag. I've never read it, but also I watched an interesting video on YouTube of why you've never read American Flag, and talking about the trouble with the series and translation of it or reception of it and the production stuff, which intrigued me. I'm actually not very familiar with Howard Chaykin in general. There are things that I've read by him in anthologies, something like the solo anthology from DC, for example. But this is supposed to be one of his most famous works, if not his defining work. I've never looked it up because I'm always a little wary about spoilers. I've always got this thought that maybe one day I will read it. Maybe one day I will find a copy or I'll find things. So I don't look things up apart from seeing if they're available or on Amazon or online bookstores, just to see if something responds to that search. But I don't usually go to Wikipedia and things like that, where I might be able to actually find out if there are collected editions, or I can ask all of you to let me know. I wonder if this one standalone number 3 issue is going to be enough to hook me. I wonder if that's a good idea, because this is really why I picked it up. It's like something I've heard of. It's something I've never read. I understand it's in the middle, but it's not too far off the start. Only 2 issues have existed before this, if I've got the original stories, or in some way at least it should be still readable as an issue 3, unlike an issue 45 or something like that. So that was my thinking behind it. Of course, I love singles and I like this era of comics. I like the way they feel. I like the way the pages look. I like the way they discolor so prettily. Letters pages. So, there's all that stuff that you will enjoy in most single issues, no matter what, the price, etc. So those are the things. So American Flag, is this something worth taking up? And is this worth reading? The first 20 issues are spectacular, Rick Ray says. This is a different era, I guess. The first 20 plus issues drawn by Chaykin are brilliant. This is volume 2. All right, okay, this is volume 2. So I'm going to have to find volume 1, and there is a collection out there, or there are Image Comics collected editions of American Flag. Okay. Abrams Arts is putting out Treehouse of Horror Omnibus. Volume 1 just came out last week. All right. This is good timing. Thank you so much, Dominic. That is good to know. I am definitely going to be taking a look at that Omnibus, Treehouse of Horror. I hope everyone else who was talking about Treehouse of Horror being out of print is making a note of this. This is a very good... Mark Russell and Gail Simone on Sonja were decent. All right, that sounds like a good combination, but I don't think that what I was looking at was Mark Russell and Gail Simone. Was it? Maybe it's Gail Simone. Okay, good news. Have I missed any other good news up on this chat? Which hardcover newer Red Sonja is tough? Okay, Sonja. Dynamite Red Sonja is feisty estrogen, Gore Vidal says. All right. They released the slipcase hardcover for Treehouse of Horror. Oh, that's the Abrams Arts one, the slipcase hardcover. Wow. All right. Also, welcome everybody who has joined us since I last said hello. Sorry, we've just been rushing through this, but a warm welcome to the live stream in which we're going over comics that I know nothing about, and the viewers either live or later watching this in a recording are going to tell me about what all these things are. So from American Flag to Black Kiss. This is the only issue of Black Kiss I found. This is #1, also by Howard Chaykin. And I think I know a little bit about this. I know that this is an adult comic. It's not. It's. I don't mean it's like adult comic, like an adult movie or pornographic or something. But it does have sex and violence, and it's supposed to be pretty brutal. I'm not going to. Well, okay, maybe a little bit. Now, looking at the first couple of pages, it feels cool. It feels indie in I don't know how to describe this. This page over here and this one, they almost feel like earlier issues of the Sandman, like maybe the Doll's House or something like that, but mixed together with a lot of similar thing. Maybe this is just the layout with the music running through it and the grid over here, but it's an interesting start. Now I know there's this adult stuff just peeking around that page, so I'm not turning it any further. But yes, this has a reputation of being slightly depraved or amoral, although I wonder whether it's still sensationalistic in that way, and also in which way are we talking about. Depravity, amorality can be extremely interesting, or it can be very boring. So I'm intrigued by this. I am a little unhappy that, because this is a very thin, this doesn't even feel like, I mean, maybe it's 32 pages, but it feels very, very slim. So I'm a little unhappy that there weren't more issues of this out there, but I am glad that they had this, and it's a #1, so I can start at the beginning. I can read this and then see if this is something that I want to read more of. Rick Ray says, love Black Kiss, one of the weirdest twists. All right, so there's a twist. All right, I don't want to know. Look at all that inside front cover stuff. Yeah, the front cover stuff in that must have been from the other book, American Flag, or the merchandise for Black Kiss. Is that what you were talking about? That's, I think, the first page. Yeah, so that's the inside front cover. It's pretty nice, cool design. And he's like, yeah, slick. And he's like, buy our t-shirts. But yes, independent publishing. I don't even see a publisher. Maybe it's First Comics. Is it? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you can make out that logo over there, what that logo is. All right, but Howard Chaykin's Black Kiss #1. The ads in Black Kiss. Comic Crack says, try to find the big Black Kiss. They collect multiple issues. All right, I will look into that. Gore Vidal says, Black Kiss is quite tame now compared to comics like Crossed. Well, yeah, well, I think people, I haven't read Crossed. I've heard people talk about it. So I think Crossed is still one of those things out there. But I'm trying to think about what depraved, amoral comics I've read that I've really enjoyed. And I think they've always been ones that have a sense of humor. So there is something very creepy about that 24 hours issue of Sandman, and I think that made a big impression on me because I hadn't read anything that violent and visceral at that point of time. So I still have, that still has its effect on me. But when I think about depraved, amoral sex and violence, I'm thinking always of Jason Shiga's Demon, which is very funny and very twisty and clever in a completely cartoony way. So somewhere, I think the abstraction of violence and gore can just go around to being cartoony again. And that's a bad thing because they're trying to be serious. So I like the cartoony stuff because they're trying to be cartoony, and then they just manipulate it. That humor manipulates it better for me, I've seen. Anyway, some other things that I picked up. This is from Oni Press, Oni double feature. Neil Gaiman's Only the End of the World Again. Now, this is a double feature, and I have no other idea about it. Stuff in the back advertises some Jay and Silent Bob comic, and the Oni double feature. Black and white comics from Oni. Let's see. This is part 1, adapted by P. Craig Russell. So that's interesting. It's a game adapted by Russell that I don't know if this has been part of any of the Neil Gaiman library that Dark Horse are putting out. I don't think I've heard of this story before, if it's called Only the End of the World Again. And if it's a double feature, there must be another story in there. So this is... Wait, this is P. Craig Russell? That's interesting. It's a very interesting... No, it's not. It's adapted by P. Craig Russell, artwork by Troy Nixie. No wonder. Right, so it's an adaptation with art by Troy Nixie. I like this art. But I suppose there are 2 stories. Now I'm worried about... All right, so the double feature is Zombie Kid Part 2. Yes, so I guess the other one had part 1. And then there's a part 2 of this somewhere. So you keep buying double features and they have like step... Is that how it was? Is like you get part 1 of something and part 2 of something, then you get part 2 of something in the next issue and part 1 of something new. It's a nifty trick. It's a cool way of getting 2 stories out there. But anyway, that's my theorizing with all of 30 seconds of looking at this from Oni Press. The double feature. Maybe the double feature was a long-running series. And then I found this, which was one of the older and more unique things from the publisher point of view. So we've got Marvel and DC, and then of course there's Image, and we saw a couple of trade publishers out there. But this, as far as I saw, unless I'm forgetting or overlooked something, this is the only thing I found from Kitchen Sink Press. And this is called Snarf. I have no idea what Snarf is. I think the only Snarf I know was in the Thundercats, right? Wasn't that pet sidekick creature called Snarf? But anyway, from Kitchen Sink Press, I'm guessing this is from... I guess this is from the 80s, although it could be from earlier. Oh, I think it's 1990, so just out of the 80s. It's got nice, rough, very rough paper. This is virtually tree bark right here. Nicely yellowed, black and white comics that I'm guessing are... This might be the kind of stuff that I'm thinking about. The stuff that was neither the outright counterculture alternative nor the so-called mainstream. But then I'm not sure. Is this more like Zap? Or is this more like Mad? Or is it an anthology and therefore it has adult... I mean, I'm guessing it is adult, so I'm guessing that it will probably hew closer to the alternative comics that I'm thinking of. But I'd never heard of it. I never knew of this thing called Snarf. This looks interesting. Of course, not all of it will be to everyone's tastes. That's just the nature of these comics, but they give me a very a very different look at what is being published at a time like 1990. So you might associate most of that with Image Comics and that kind of boom and bust comics. But yeah, so Kitchen Sink Press, black and white, indie comics publishing, for some reason in the box with all of those Marvel, DC, and Image Comics. And because I spent all that time hunting in there, I found it. Look, there's an ad from Fantagraphics for 8-Ball. A new series. New something by... I guess they're advertising the Lloyd... Yes, they're talking about... Proudly presents 8-Ball. I think this is 8-Ball #1, so they might be actually advertising. They might be advertising the launch of 8-Ball in 1990. But yeah, it's fantastic. I was very happy to find this. Snarf #1 came out in 1972. Yeah, it felt like a 1972 comic. Apparently, that issue is from 1990. Comic Crack says it's an excellent series. Anthology of underground and indie creators, and I guess it was Sleepy. It was a long-running underground series because Comic Crack is saying it ran from 1972, and I at least have 1990. Of course, it could have obviously gone away in the middle, but it's Kitchen Sink Press, which I know went under soon afterwards. But I don't know if Snarf was published by Kitchen Sink Press since 1972. I don't know if Kitchen Sink Press existed in 1972, but Kitchen Sink Press probably went under in 1991, I think, or 92, from what I remember of Dennis Kitchen and From Hell stories. But yeah, so that's from 1990. Sleepy Reader says, I think I bought an issue at a head shop of Snarf. Maybe it's that type of comic. Gore Vidal says, so far, everything you've shown is better than I find locally. Well, I mean, that's ridiculous, right? I mean, this is the kind of stuff that, well, I will say that obviously there's many boxes, like those photos that I showed. So there was a lot out there. And this is the stuff I was gleaning from it. And there's probably a lot out there that I just missed because I didn't know, because these have to catch my attention in some way or the other. Like that Snarf issue catches my attention because it's from Kitchen Sink Press. You know, Howard Chayk and the name catches my attention. And it's the same thing over here. I found this copy of Blood. And first of all, it's a very nice comic. It's not, you know, it's one of those things where the thicker covers immediately make you feel that some thought and some care and some love has gone into the production of it. So it's got those thick cardboard covers, and then it has it's written by J.M. de Matteis. So I recognize that name, but this is not what I associated that name with. Justice League, I guess, Justice League International, maybe, if I'm remembering correctly. And then when I open it, this feels almost Sandman-esque. It feels like Dave McKean. And so does this stuff to a certain extent. So as soon as I opened this and I flipped through a couple of pages, I was like, okay, I'm going to check this out. A little bit of David Mack, maybe. Again, I'm just throwing names out there based on my very limited sort of understanding of. But this is an American comic. This is published by, who does it say it's published by? It doesn't, and there's no logo over here. So maybe you can. Epic Comics. This is from Epic Comics, but it's a very fancy Epic Comics. I've seen some Epic Comics before. I've not seen anything this well produced. So I don't know how Blood is. I don't know how it will turn out, but it makes a very good first impression. And definitely, again, once I keep what I keep reiterating is in the context that I found it, I was very pleased. I was very surprised. What is this thing? Why is this here? Can I take it home with me? Yes, I can. Along with this, which is, I think, issue, does it say? I think it's number 3. This is volume 1. So this is volume 1. Sorry. This is volume 1 of Blood. And this is, I think, volume 3. Volume 4. So this is volume 4, this is volume 1, and there's more in between and probably more after that. So I will start with 1, obviously. I will take a look. As I said, it looks fascinating, and I wonder if there is a collected edition out there, or if issues between these and subsequent can be filled in easily. So Blood by J.M. de Matteis, and with art by Kent Williams. Kent Williams, I do not know, but as you can see, looks very impressive. Blood has a collected hardcover as well, does it? Interesting. Very fine art. Yes, I agree, Edward. Gore Vidal says, Blood is excellent. I even made a video about it. Gore, I will have to check that video out. I am very intrigued by this. Issue number 15 was 1992, was the final Snarf issue. Thanks, Comic Crack. So 1992, that's a pretty long run. That's 20 years if it was unbroken from 72. Okay. Anything else? Kitchen Sink was around in 72. Excellent. Wow. Good to know. It's a shame about 92 then. All right. So then, as I said, I found um, a section of this sale area in which they had curated and grouped things together and were selling them by in the full pack for $3 or something like that. And I picked up Astro City Local Heroes because all 5 of those issues were there. Now I have Astro City Local Heroes. I have it in single issues as well as in its collected edition. So this is a really ridiculous purchase. It's just like, this is the 3rd time I'm buying Astro City Local Heroes, and this is the 2nd time in the 5 singles. But I don't know, was I rescuing it? I was just like, it's Local Heroes, it's all 5 issues. Was I rescuing it, or did I take it away from someone? I did look around. I have to say, when I was at the sale, I was looking around. I was looking at what other people are picking up, because there were people, like I showed in the photos, there were people around me, and I wanted to, I'm out and about. I'm interacting with other human beings almost face to face. I was masked. My wife was masked. A number of people were masked. Some of them were not masked, but still, we're interacting with people. Part of that should be me looking over their shoulders and seeing what they're putting together. So a lot of people were also not familiar with what they were looking at and things like that. And if I'd seen anyone with the things that indicated that Astro City, I would have gone up and given it to them. But they were asking for Doctor Strange, and they were, they wanted to know more about the movie stuff, etc., etc. So somewhere maybe I got a little snotty and said, well, okay, fine, then I'm taking this because nobody else knows what this is. And again, these are not rare comics. These are not valuable comics. It's not that. It's just, I love Astro City. I love and Local Heroes is one of those that's got a lot of vignettes and a lot of short stories. It's not one big arc stuff. So 5 issues of Local Heroes for about $3. I picked it up even though I already have it. So that's one. The other ones that I picked up in that whole the whole set curated aren't that way. This one was just 2 issues. And it's called Neomen by Gary Winick and Frank Shiroko, I think, maybe. Gary Winick and Frank Shiroko. And there's just book 1 and book 2. I think I've heard of Gary Winick, although I am not able to place where, in which context. And this is published by Slave Labor. Slave Labor graphics are... I have a bunch of slave labor comics, most of them in book form or collected edition form, but they also did publish Evan Dorkin comics, and I'm a big fan of those early Evan Dorkin comics. So I think I got familiar with slave labor because of Evan Dorkin's comics and Johnny the Homicidal Robot. Maybe that was also from the publisher. But here, this is something that I've never heard of. There's a vague recollection of this name. I know the publisher, and that's why I picked it up. There seem to be 2 issues. If they're curating it and saying this is all there is the story just in these 2 issues, or maybe it's just an arc, like they had with the other things over there. And I think that's the place where I wish more people would have focused their attention, because I don't know if people were looking at it, but I think even if you're new to superheroes and you've watched movies or TV shows and you're looking for the comics, it's so fantastic if someone has curated for you an arc or a couple of stories put together. And I've seen that in a couple of comic book stores that I've visited in the United States, where their back issue section may also have one of the staff sort of curated and put arcs together, which I think is it's a wonderful service towards humanity. So I don't know anything about Neomen. I don't know anything about Gary Winick. Let me know if this is anything interesting. Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. Yeah, I think that's the name of the comic. I think that was Slave Labor. I could be wrong, but I think Johnny the Homicidal Maniac was Slave Labor graphics. Comic Crack says it's amazing to me to see these indie comics make their way across the globe. Absolutely. That's what I was thinking, is that it's one thing to have Tom King's Batman issues over there, and even issues of Fables and Preacher, which I noticed around over there, just random issues. It's one thing because I know those are huge series and they're popular series, etc. To see these small black and white comics and kitchen sink press comics, those are the things, and then even slave labor. Those are, I think, I get the feeling that somewhere someone is selling paper. I mean, it happens to be comics, but they're selling it like paper and someone's buying it like paper. It has to be, because there's no real distinction being made. This is just stuff that's coming out of stores or factories or something like that, I think. And similarly, it's not Neomen, but it is Next Man, which is oddly related in my mind, at least. And Next Man is something I picked up, because it's 5 issues or 6 issues being curated for me in a package for very little money. It's written by Roger McKenzie. The series is by Roger McKenzie and Vince Argonetezzi, and it's published by Comico, which is another small, well, I mean, it's not that heard of. I've now encountered a number of Comico comics, and I've seen, which is why I was glad to see some people on this live stream. I've seen on their videos, and when they find comics, or when they're talking about old comics and classic comics, or publishers who are defunct, I've seen them talk about Comico, and I have a couple of Comico comics, because I'm trying to remember now, but maybe Gru was first published in a Comico comic. Maybe the Rocketeer, that have specific comics. I get these names mixed up, but I've encountered comics like Pacific Comics because I was looking specifically for the Rocketeer. I've encountered Comico because Gru appeared in Star Slayer or something like that. So it's very vague and it's very fractured. So I know nothing about Next Man. I have never heard of these two creators, but I do have 4 or 5 issues over here. Destroy on the cover. I don't know if this is any good, but from Comico Comics, from, I am guessing, the early 90s, if not the late 80s. Next Man, let me know about this, if this is something worth looking into. Comico was publishing the Elementals and Grendel at the time. All right, so Grendel was at Comico first, and good looking covers on this Next Man. All right. So while I was looking at the Image comics, actually, while I was looking at all of that stuff, Image, DC, etc., my wife came up to me and said, "Hey, don't you like this guy, Joe Kubert?" and gave me this. And that's when I changed from the long box I was at and went to where she was. I was like, what is this? And where did you get this? Here I am looking at all of these single issues. And this is magazine-sized card stock Joe Kubert's Tor from Eclipse Comics. All right, I will take a look. So that's what I went over. I was very glad she brought them to my attention, because I was able to find this one and I was able to find this one. So I got 3 of these things, which, like, I didn't even need anymore. I just needed to see Joe Kubert, and then I needed to see these covers in this format, in this size. I don't know anything about Tor. I've never heard about Tor, but here I am with 3 of these issues. As I said, excellent production on the covers. The pages are also thick, they're creamy, they're not glossy, and full color. This looks really good. Now, how good the story is will obviously remain to be seen, and Joe Kubert is someone whose art, and it's probably because of how young I was when I first encountered this art is mesmerizing to me. This kind of changed my opinion of the way musculature, and I think Joe Kubert's Tarzan was one of those things when I was very young that just created a sense of superhero physique without it being a superhero in that way. And so this seems very reminiscent to me of that. Of course, Conan would fall into that same category. So I don't know, is Tor just a Conan ripoff? Is it something that came out of that? Is it something separate? I have no idea. These look to be in excellent condition. They're not dinged or torn in any way. They seem to be almost European album in presentation. Of course, they're paper and not hardcovers or even the Tintin or asterisk sized quality covers, but very, very, very much a classic feel for me. So I guess I'll be finding out what Sleepy Reader has. He says Thor was the one character Joe Kubert owned. All right, yeah, so it's his creator owned. It does say Joe Kubert's Thor. And which novels did my wife find? I was just reading she'll have to answer that herself, but I'm very happy she found these for me, and that's where and as I was saying, that I'm very happy that I went over to that section of where the comics were, because looking through this, I now found Eclipse Comics. So I'd seen Marvel, DC, Image, Comico, now Eclipse, and with the Eclipse, no, sorry, what was it? Not Eclipse, Epic Comics. With Epic Comics, I also found Wizard Magazine. Now, Wizard Magazine is something I've never read, but I actually do know a little about, and that's because people online and on YouTube channels, they talk about Wizard Magazine. They never introduce what it is, so I have to glean what it is. I think Wizard Magazine was a comics journal which reported on comics. It reported on new publications, and it also published those number zeros that were bagged with this magazine. So that's what those Wizard comics are. Wizard comics are specially commissioned comics that were polybagged. Now I know that that term is used over here, that were polybagged over here. And this is Wizard number 15. It has some stories about X-Men animated series, a Bill Shatner interview, Jim Lee trading card. And this polybag also contains 2 cards. I am guessing that the Jim Lee trading card is this one over here. It looks like a Liefeld character. But there are 2 cards in this polybag, and this one's an Archie card. So Wizard Magazine that I've heard about, Archie card, sure, I'm picking this up. I will open this and read it because I want to see, I think it's a comic previews, and that's always interesting to have a little time capsule. I'm guessing that there are people out there who just have every issue of Wizard that has ever come out. Must be like the Nintendo Power collections that I've seen. I'm sure that's out there, and there's like a treasure trove of comics history, American comics history, at least publication history recorded within these pages. And I also got a couple of trading cards. Oh, now you get a better view of that one. I don't know what that is, but Wizard number 15 with an Archie trading card and a Wildcats. It's a Jim Lee Wildcats trading card. Alongside that Wizard magazine, I also found copies of Epic Magazine, and this I think it's the same thing as Wizard, or maybe I had thought that it was the same thing as Wizard, like it was about its comics journalism and interviews and previews and what's coming up later. But Epic Magazine seems to be a collection of comics. It seems to be a comics anthology and I'm very, very happy to see that it's almost all comics. So I think there are essays, there are reviews, there is a writing, but it's not a 50-50, or even, it's certainly not dominating, but it's, as you can see, I'm just turning pages and there's some text, but most of it seems to me to be comics. So nice classic feeling, but that large format, that magazine format, having the art at this size at full color, I think is wonderful. It's like a little, like all of these things, it's a little treasure that I just found. I'm not Epic Illustrated, I'm not sure how long it ran, how many issues it ran for, what it collected, what it had in it, but there are interesting things in this issue. All new Generation Zero by Pepe Moreno, Wanderer by Mike Kaluta. That's what's being advertised on the cover over here. You got Trina Robbins, Jim Starlin, and a new fantasy series, Children of the Stars by Charles Vess. So this issue of Epic starts a new Charles Vess series. So I guess there's a look at that. I guess there's an opportunity to discover. And I looking through this earlier, I saw like these are art listings of portfolios available for you to order from. And look, there's a Joe Kubert portfolio over there and advertising a post box where you can write to and get. I guess you could buy all this art at that time. I don't think that it was affordable even then, but it's so interesting to me to see these kind of things, and it's also very interesting to me to see people's self-published comics and magazines. I think I've seen Seth and maybe even Daniel Klaus. But there are people who publish and then they say for art from this issue, when they're publishing their zines or when they're publishing their journals, you're like for art, right? And, $15 a page or $20 a page. I'm not saying that was the case for these artists I mentioned, but similar to that, there's self-published things and them advertising their art. It always makes me go, if I had only been there at that time, I would have loved to get a page from this. But this is pure comics. This is a comics magazine that looks truly epic, if you'll pardon that. So Edward says, I think Epic lasted for 34 issues. Sorry, somebody else said it with 30 or so issues, 34 issues, Comic Crack says. John Byrne Galactus series never got finished. Galactus series. So Epic is from Marvel then? I mean, this seems interesting. I'm not. Would they be able to publish Marvel characters? Or I know that there was the imprint. The portfolios were high-end print collections. Sleepy Reader says, "Thank you so much, Sleepy Reader. You're getting me down to earth." Where I was just like, are they just advertising Joe Kubert art? So there's a special print collections of the original art. All right, no wonder. That makes a lot more sense. So I got two volumes of Epic Illustrated. The Marvel Magazine of Adult Fantasy. It says so right there. This is it's what time is it? It's almost midnight, so you'll have to pardon me. But yes, Marvel Magazine. Epic is obviously the same Epic as the imprint of theirs, which is where we've seen a couple of things on this channel. Also, the Akira reprints from Marvel were part of their Epic imprint. So I'm guessing Epic Illustrated is actually from that Epic imprint. I love this format. I think I'm going to try and find more. Well, first I'll read the stories, but there's just something about this format that makes it very, very appealing. And again, like everything else, makes it a wonderful thing to just discover tucked into an alley somewhere one Saturday afternoon. Let's see, just a handful more. So in the magazine section, I also found these. I said earlier that everything was American. These, I think, are the only exception to the Titan paperback of The Simpsons that I found. This is Captain Britain, and I think this is Marvel UK because it says 10p over there. So, and there's something about that, that always looks a little shady, as if like it was something else and then something else has been pasted in over there. They always looked different to me, the ones that there's always the ones that felt pasted in. But Captain Britain, the greatest superhero of them all. This is Marvel number 36. I don't know anything about Captain Britain. I think maybe I've seen Captain Britain in some of those I don't know, like a crossover thing as one of many characters in the background. I've never read anything about Captain Britain, but these look cool, and they were cheap, and they were big, and they seem like a good way to get into the experience of reading Captain Britain the way that these were published, rather than a trade paperback or an omni. What's interesting is, like some other magazine-sized UK comics I have seen, these are black and white, not color. And in fact, when I was young, I read a lot of Marvel comics in black and white. And I mean comics that were originally published in the United States in color. But because of what I was seeing were reprints like this, or those reprint collections, that put together the classic X-Men, but put together in black and white. In fact, the the original X-Men stories, I didn't realize they were in color until much later. I thought they were originally black and white stories and the series got color later. So seeing Marvel comics like this in color is in black and white is very nostalgic for me, because for me it was like, how movies used to be black and white and then they became color. That was my impression of the X-Men when I was young, that they used to be black and white and then they became color later. But then I did read a lot of later comics from the 80s, late 70s, that were also reprinted in black and white. I don't think I ever read anything Captain Britain like, but I do believe there were at least a couple of larger UK reprints that I read in black and white, but now I can't remember their names, or if I'm even remembering correctly at all. So these two issues of Captain Britain, they look pretty good. The artwork looks nice, but it's really that physical object that I'm appreciating over here. The magazine-sized, slim black and white comic. Again, very, very unusual reading for me. Very not things that I'm used to, especially not since my childhood with the stray random copies that I would have found. So a couple of issues of Captain Britain to sort of put me in that zone and try and see what I think of this character from these two issues in these large black and white UK editions. Epic was a Marvel imprint, Silver Surfer story in the very first issue. Thanks, Rick. Weren't the Marvel Akiras done in color? Yes, they were. The Marvel Akiras were Western format, so the spine on your left and in color. I have a comparison. My first video I ever made on this channel was a look at the Akira box set from Kodansha. And my second video was a comparison between that black and white and the Marvel Epic color of the first couple of issues. If you're interested in non-HD, non-microphone, for the love of comics, vintage videos, you should check them out. Marvel UK's first original comic, Captain Britain. Interesting. All right. Now, then, in this area... Oh, right. I found a third Captain Britain comic. And in this area, I also found another trade paperback. And this is Elric of Melniborn, The Weird of the White Wolf, from First Publishing. Michael Moorcock's Elric. Now, I've heard of Michael Moorcock's Elric. I've heard that it's not just a classic prose series, but I heard that the comics adaptation was pretty good. So this is adapted by Roy Thomas, Michael T. Gilbert, and P. Craig Russell. So there are some P. Craig Russell stories in there. I think the scripts are by Roy Thomas, and there have been, I'm trying to remember if there's anything outside of Conan. I can't remember if I've read any other Roy Thomas, but I don't know if The Weird of the White Wolf is the first volume. I don't think it's the first volume, actually, but it may be a standalone story. I don't know. Can I read Elric starting with this volume? Can I just jump in here? I think there are some hardcover collections, but I looked into Elric a long time ago, but I wasn't able to find a satisfactory way of reading it in a way that was from the beginning. So I was happy to find this. I was happy to find this at the low price that I did. It seems to be in very good condition. It's full color print, glossy pages that aren't really dirty. They've got like slight discoloring, but as I said, that's sort of pleasing, that little vignette across the white of the page. And it looks interesting. This is, I think, a fully contained story, so it should do me. I am hoping that it does me good as an opening place to read. But if there's something else I should be looking at, or if this won't make any sense to me at all, let me know. Again, a larger than normal comic format from First Publishing. I'm not sure when this is from. Maybe the mid 90s. Let me know. The artwork is pretty nice. Gore Vidal says Moorcock's Elric has a huge influence on writers, including Neil Gaiman, who discovered the books when he was a kid. Moorcock didn't write the Elric books in sequence. Okay. Hi, Rewanji. Good to see you. Comic Crack says beautiful version, load of the singles. So all of the Elric were published in singles form and then collected in here, because this seems a little wider than the normal single issue format. So I'm wondering if it's just sort of scaled up, or if the singles had a different format then. So while I was looking at that, talking about, sorry, the weird of the white wolf, I also found other things that had weird in the cover. This magazine. And this magazine is number 11 of something. Warriors of the Shadow Realm. And this looks like, it looks like it's got a number of different things in it. It's fantasy. And a Marvel Weird World super special. So this is Marvel Epic. So it's from Epic. It's magazine size, just like those Epic magazines we saw. So that's already nice and off to a good start. And it is fantasy. It's a little, in the fantasy tradition of Tolkien! ! Tyndall's Quest, and mind-boggling 3-page color fold-out. So it's being pitched pretty hard as a fantasy thing, but going through it, it looks nice. Look, there's a nice large map, and it's full. The pages, the color is going to the edges. Now, as soon as I see this, I'm obviously reminded of ElfQuest. So this seems reminiscent. The faces, the bodies, of course, they look elvish, elven. So this may or may not be influenced by ElfQuest. This is, let's see, what are the credits? It's conceived and written by Doug Moench, and it's designed and drawn by John Buscema. So there you go, Doug Moench and John Buscema doing ElfQuest. No, it's not ElfQuest. It's Warriors of the Shadow Realm, but it looks beautiful. So here I am, just picking up random Qbert, and that too not stuff that I've actually heard of, but which looks pretty good to me. Again, you've got these nice parchment-like yellowish pages. You got the slight browning around that, but the colors are vivid, and I know that this is where we talk a lot about the recoloring, and I think the colors over here just look so good, and there must have been some sort of planning about what paper they were going to be on. I'm sure that the colors have faded a little bit. The discoloring of the paper must be manifesting in the way the color comes across as well, but it's still so pleasing to look at. And I would just think that when something like this, if I see a modern reprint of it, this would just be very garish. I know these blues. I know how these blues look in recolored editions. When looking at these, it looks lovely. Look at that double page spread as well. This is just fantastic stuff, and I haven't even started reading it yet. But so I had never heard of this. I had never heard of Joe Kubert's high fantasy in the tradition of Tolkien, Warriors of the Shadow Realm, and now I was lucky enough to pick up this issue and this issue. So that was number 11, and this is number 13. So I looked for number 12, just hoping that maybe there's an arc, maybe there's a 3-issue arc that I can read between these 3 issues. Unfortunately, number 12 was not part of that. So it says part 3 here, which makes me think this is part 1. That means there's a part 2 somewhere. But Warriors of the Shadow Realm, this is in even better condition than this one. it's just, I mean, and I don't mean condition from the collectability point of view. It's like I have no fear of reading these. That's what I mean, is that they're so firmly held together that I can read them in bed and I can read them on the couch and I can really sort of wallow in these comics the way these magazines and single issues are supposed to be. You know, you're supposed to not sit at a table and put them up the way that we have to do with our hardcovers or, our omnibuses or absolute editions. This is just a completely different experience and quite sturdy and quite able to take it. So those are two the things that I was very happy to find. Warriors of the Shadow Realm by Doug Moench and Joe Kubert. Who knew? I mean, possibly you guys. So I'm saying Joe Kubert when I mean John Buscema. But this is not something famous. I don't think I've seen this collected anywhere. I've not heard of this in any other form. Maybe because it's dismissed as an ElfQuest ripoff or as an ElfQuest wannabe. I mean, this is very superficial judgment just from looking at what we're seeing over here, but I do. Speaking of ElfQuest, I've seen some of the recoloring even in the ElfQuest volumes that Dark Horse brought out, and I don't think they match the originals and don't match the way the colors look over here. So, whole bunch of fantasy with Elric and those two comics, and then that's it. That's the last two things that I have over here are actually trade paperbacks, or this trade paperback. So I found this early on when I got there and was looking around, and I was in the trade paperback area, which was the first place I looked, and I found the Simpsons, and I found this called this book called The Next Nexus by, is it focusing? No, it's not focusing. Oh, there we go. Yes. So by Mike Barron and Steve Rude. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk about Nexus, but just as that was a great series. But that's really all I've heard. That was a great series. Then when playing the Eisner's game on one of my live streams, I saw that Nexus had won best series or best new series or best writer, one of those big awards. It had won the Eisner for that, and I was just like, how come I've not heard more of this, or how come I don't find more collected editions of this? So I have no real, again, for the same reasons as I said before, I don't want spoilers and I don't want to start doing research that might end up spoiling something. So I don't know how long Nexus ran, and I don't know what it means by the next Nexus. So I was like, okay, something is better than nothing. I do know that it's Mike Barron and Steve Rude who are the creators of Nexus. So no matter what this is, no matter what this I keep losing the focus. No matter what this is, it'll be by the original creators. So I picked this up, even though it says The Next Nexus, and I don't know whether I need to read something before this or how much I need to read before this. So just when I first got there, and just before I was going to leave, when I was on the other side looking through all the magazines, I found this larger trade paperback, and it said Nexus, and I was like, which Nexus is this? And right at the top it says the original Nexus, and I was like, okay. And it says by Mike Barron and Steve Rude, and an introduction by Chris Claremont. And then I started reading a little bit of that, because it's very slim, so it's obviously not going to be the whole thing. I guess, I don't know, as I said, I don't know how long. So I started reading the introduction, and I got the sense that he's talking about Nexus, the comic book, coming out for the first time. And then I looked inside, and I was just like, is this the beginning of Nexus? Is this the original Nexus as a prequel, or is this the original Nexus as a collection saying the original Nexus? So that's the part I didn't understand, but I was suddenly quite intrigued by the fact that, did I just get the original? Did I get the start of a series that I've wanted to start? Is this what it is? Or more likely, is it is it just something in the middle? Because it's by the original creators, because it is Mike Baron and Steve Rude. I know I'm not going to be like off base too much unless they really went downhill. So if the original series is great and these are continuations or adjacent to it and they didn't go completely downhill, I'm guessing I still have some good stories. But let me know if this is where Nexus starts. I mean, of course, I could just do my own research now, but they're both from First Publishing. Again, another thing from First Publishing that I didn't think that I would just find in a warehouse in New Delhi. This is a more traditional trade paperback size. This one is a broader, wider, closer to that magazine formats or those UK comics that we're looking at, although not quite as big. So there's something about the format that changed from between this and this. I guess it became more standard, or this was just shrunk down, or this is an expanded. I don't know. I have no idea what I'm talking about in this case, but I'm very excited to have gotten my hands on things that say Nexus by Mike Baron and Steve Rude. I don't know what the chronology is. I don't know what order I'm supposed to read them in, and I don't even know if this is the place to start. And if it isn't the place to start, is it okay to still start there? Even if it isn't absolutely technically the beginning, is it a thing that I can start? Because I obviously don't want to read the next Nexus until I have first read the original Nexus. But then again, there might be something between them. So I don't know. Collection from 1985, Edward says. Maybe not a collection. Gore Vidal is not familiar with the next Nexus. All right. Black and White Nexus came before the color comic published by Capital Comics and then by First, says Gore Vidal. Oh my goodness. So there's a lot before First Comics, I'm guessing. So I don't know. I don't know what the original is, but I think I'm just going to start with the original Nexus in First Comics and then go on to the next Nexus. And if there is an easily available, and this again being relative to my location as well, if there is an easily available collection of Nexus that tells me that lets me read the story from the beginning, and if not from the chronological beginning, something that works for a reader, like something that is a good standalone read for someone just coming into it. Because having heard how much good stuff I've heard about Nexus, I'm pretty confident it's a good, like, people I respect and people I respect their opinions from a wide variety of backgrounds have said Nexus is good. There's just not that many of them. So it seems to be this criminally underread comic as well. But all right, so Edward says original Nexus is the first 3 stories collected in one book. Yes, excellent. The first 3 stories collected in one book. So therefore, that's where I'm starting. I am very happy to know that this book is where Nexus starts, or at least it collects the first 3 stories, because that means that I can get to reading Nexus, a comic that I've heard a lot about, which is also, true for a lot of different things I'm going to be reading. And that's the good thing about single issues and magazines and stuff like that, is that you can read them quickly and have a quick bite-sized idea about something. So a lot of these things I did buy as samplers, not the first things that I was talking about, which were just like, oh, look, a single issue of Long Halloween, oh, look, a single issue with a good cover, those kind of things. But a lot of these are things that I have no idea about, and I've been illuminated by all of you in the chat, and I think I'll be continuing to be illuminated by people leaving comments who watch this later. But also, what else should I be taking a look at? What else might I enjoy? What else should I be seeking out in collected editions? But all of that thanks to this rather odd kind of occurrence of being able to go to a physical location in which you have these singles and magazines sort of laid out, almost like a flea market, but not quite. And it's so unusual and so different from my regular experience of buying comics. And I think for a lot of people in India, it would be an unusual experience. that I had so much fun just with the thing itself, which is why I wanted to talk about it live. If you are in India, you might want to check out this website, which a couple of my friends have been using for a while, and they like it because they get back issues and they get the things that they want. You know, they someone wants and rather obscure stuff, obscure being Marvel DC obscure, but they use it to fill holes in their collection, to get runs by people, to get collaborations that they've heard about, you know, in history, that they've read about online, and then they go search and they're able to find those issues. And I think that's really more fun. I think finding that Astro City story that is so beloved in single issue form and reading it in those 4 issues is a lot more fun for me than hunting out something that might be highly valued on the market or something like that. I mean, that's a completely different kind of thing. But, you know, the idea of these back issues and being in history, being in the footsteps or being in the shoes of the people who read them for the first time, you know, like you don't know the way long Halloween's going to turn out. You only read it 1 month at a time, and now you're on chapter 7 and you've got 5 more chapters to go before you find out who the killer is. That kind of thing, I think, is a thing that I try to replicate using this, and of course Discovery. But that's all I have for this live stream. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and hanging out. I hope you enjoyed this impromptu look at some very impromptu purchases. I ended up spending, you know, more money than I thought I was going to be, but I think you'll say that it's quite understandable. This has been For the Love of Comics. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next video, either an edited video or live stream. Have a nice